So my name is David Gurteen. I've been working as a independent consultant now for the last 30 years. I don't know where the time has gone. Mainly working in the knowledge management field, but my focus these days is very much on conversation and the power of conversation, um, which is going to be reflected in this talk. And I've been developing, for the last 10 years or so, I've been developing a concept that I call conversational leadership. But we're not going to go there today. Today, we're going to take a look at collective thinking during complex times. And I think there's no question that we live in very complex times. I thought things were bad enough before the advent of artificial intelligence, but now, trying to make sense of what's going on in the world and the future of business is indeed challenging. So let's take a look at this, shall we? So I want to start off by just talking a little bit about complexity. I think it's foundational to what I want to say. I've learned over the years that many people don't understand the difference between, say, a complex system and a complicated system. For many years, I didn't either. And it's a really important distinction to make. So let's just take a minute or two to explain that. 1969, I was 20 years old when man first landed on the moon. It was a technical challenge, very clearly a technical challenge, but it had a very clear goal. Success was measurable. We either did it or we didn't. Um, I guess expertise existed, but it was at its limits. Um, Interestingly, there's probably less computer power in that landing module than we have in our pockets these days. And the whole thing could be planned. It was in many ways a relatively straightforward, but what you might call complicated challenge. Come to today, hey, we've got other problems. We struggle with climate change. What's the difference? Why should climate change be so different to putting a man on the moon? Well, we can't agree on the problem. We can't agree on the priorities. We can't agree on the solution. And hey, we're not even too sure maybe what success is like. It's often referred to as an adaptive challenge. The problem with these sort of complex challenges is that the system responds. You act in one way, and the system isn't static. It responds to you. It pushes back on you, and this is part of what makes it so difficult. So the moon landing was complicated. Issues like climate change are complex, and complex issues are a very different type of problem. They're fundamentally different. And this is really important to understand. Okay. So we're living in a complex world, a highly complex world. I was born in 1948. If you think back to just after the Second World War, I know many of you are not quite as old as I am, but you probably know a little bit about the history. The world has changed massively, absolutely massively in that time, out of all recognition in many ways. And I just want to look at this change. We're living in what's often referred to as the meta crisis, sometimes the poly crisis. It's really an entangled mix of different problems, different challenges, ecological, economic, technological. And these are problems, issues, challenges that don't exist in isolation. They are entangled together. I was just thinking earlier that with artificial intelligence, we're developing artificial intelligence and we're building these great data centers, these huge data centers, and hey, they're affecting issues like water supply. So you can see how these issues, well, that's one example of how these issues are entangled. And often there are really no solutions to any of these problems. There are only responses, and they're ongoing dynamic responses. And the fundamental reason here in this last 75 years is that the world has become hyper connected. I guess we immediately think of our digital networks, the internet, the World Wide Web, this massive worldwide digital connection. Each and every one of us has got a computer in our pocket that enables us to maybe talk to potentially to millions, if not billions, of other people in the world. I mean, that's quite unprecedented. My wife works as a financial analyst for a large bank in the city here in London, and I've learned a lot about the financial system over the last few years, and it's rather scary at times. We've got a very large, interconnected, complex system where if any small thing goes wrong, like the last financial crisis, that wasn't such a small thing, but we are very vulnerable, shall I say? And we've got other supply chains, and again, we're seeing examples all the time. If we look at the oil supply chain and the fertilizer supply chain through the Straits of Hormuz, we can see how interdependent we all are. Okay, so we've got a very hyper-connected world, and it's this world, this hyperconnectivity, that leads to the complexity that we face. And the big issue here is cause and effect. In technical systems, in simpler systems, if you do something, the outcome is usually pretty clear. There's probably only one outcome. In a complex system, you're never too sure what the outcome is going to be. They're inherently unpredictable. And always in a complex system, and again, I'm looking at our world here, our global world as a complex system, clearly, there are always unintended consequences, unanticipated consequences of anything that we do. So again, I'm just reinforcing the message that complex is not the same as complicated. And we need to think very differently about the world and very differently about the problems and the challenges that we face. Given this complexity, it has really only arisen this last, in my lifetime, this last 75 years or so. So this is the challenge, because we can't predict things, making sense, trying to understand our world today is extremely difficult. Each and every one of us doesn't see the whole picture. We've all got our own opinions. We don't have all the information. We have disinformation, misinformation. We have, bad actors who are feeding us that stuff. We all see things differently. Experts are usually an expert in one domain. It's very difficult to be an expert across all the crises that form the polycrisis. And then fundamentally, good decisions are really, really difficult to make. So this is the challenge, I think, that we face as I guess as a species and as a global civilization that we might call ourselves today. Okay. So just to recap the chain of logic here. The meta crisis has come about because everything is connected, hyper-connected. That connectivity in turn creates the complexity of the world. Complexity in its turn creates uncertainty, unpredictability. And it's this uncertainty that's the challenge. It's the sense-making challenge. Just reflect on that for a moment. So that's the challenge. We have another small problem, and that's our individual ability to reason. Let me explain this to you. If you go to Wikipedia, you will find maybe 200 or so-called cognitive biases. These are flaws, or they can be seen as flaws in our thinking ability as individuals. We are not very good at reasoning individually. I often say that we are not rational creatures, we are rationalizing ones. And what I mean by that is that we don't look at the evidence out there and analyze it and draw a conclusion. We jump straight to the conclusion based on our life experiences, based on our biases and our upbringing. And then we look for the evidence to confirm our conclusion. So it's not too surprising that everybody has got a different view of the world. Just look at some of the issues that are going on now. Go and look on social media. Everybody has got an opinion, and clearly, many of them are wrong. Some of them are only partial stories, and some of them, contain a lot of truth. But there's no one person there that really understands the extent of what's going on in the world. Now, these two gentlemen, Hugo Mercier and Dan Sperber, I think they're two psychologists. They wrote this book, The Enigma of Reason, a few years ago. And their theory was that evolution didn't shape us to reason individually. And their point was, hey, it's done a pretty bad job, which is surprising. What they think is that reason evolved socially, that evolution shaped us to evolve socially together through conversation, through dialogue. Thinking back to maybe early men and women around those prehistoric campfires, talking about the day or the upcoming hunt for the following day. We test our ideas, our plans through conversation, through dialogue. We challenge assumptions through debates and arguments that we might have. And fundamentally, we refine our thinking.